Denton Davidson for Gold Derby here with Linda Dowds, the makeup department head, and Stephanie Ingram, the hair department head for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, starring Jessica Chastain. Welcome to both of you. And I'm just going to get started real quick with Linda. You know, when people think about Tammy Faye Bakker, a lot of us, for better or worse, will instantly go right to how she looked. Is that added pressure when you join onto the film to take on such an iconic figure?
I think that anytime you're taking on a real life person, there is additional pressure with that because there are always people that will have, memory or thought of that person, or they were exposed a lot to it. And also they have family members that maybe still exist. So there is that additional pressure always. With Tammy Faye, I think there's a whole generation that maybe just knows her from those sort of late night sketch shows, the mascara running down her face and all of that. And what I found was I never found one piece of footage, one interview, one piece of PTL club or anything where her makeup was all running like that. It really was something that was created in the comedy world. And so what I wanted to do was it was super important to, yes, acknowledge she's larger than life every which way. Her makeup is large, it's bold, it's colorful, and there's a lot of it. But I never wanted it to go into the world of caricature. And so I think for all of us, but like for me, very specifically, I have hope that I've achieved where I take the makeup to the line, but that we don't cross that line into caricature. And she was a big lover of makeup. She didn't understand why people didn't really like her look or made fun of her. She just loved it. She bought lots of it, tried lots of it, and wore lots of it. And so we just tried to give respect to the person that we found her to be. And yeah.
And Stephanie, you've been working with Jessica for years on various projects. Both of you have, actually. What were your thoughts when she came to you and said, Stephanie, I need you to help turn me into Tammy Faye Bakker?
My first thought was, wow, okay. With the research that I'd done, I was like, okay, well, there's going to be lots of wigs, lots of different styles and looks throughout the periods. And I was like, let's do it.
And Jessica gives an amazing performance. I mean, wow, she really dives into this.
Yes.
So Linda, how do you manage sort of balancing some sort of restraints and making sure you don't go into caricature, as you said before? Is that based on the research that you've done, or is that a specific technique that you want to make sure you use?
It was based on research for part of it, and research not only in her physical look, but research about who she was. I grew up knowing all of that programming. I watched the scandal unfold. And I think I, like many people, kind of grouped Jim and Tammy into sort of one entity. And what I learned about her was I saw a whole other side that I really didn't know. And I saw this really empathetic, amazingly generous and kind woman. And I think that also kind of, we wanted to bring a humanity to her and show her empathetic side. And so I think naturally everything progressed that way. So you don't want to make fun of somebody that, you see a lot of goodness in. Whatever happened with the finances, knowing, not knowing, unless you're right there, it's really, it's hard to know. But I think that was a really important thing. And I think it was important for Jessica as well. And I think we all felt a sense of that. So we had lots of discussions amongst ourselves. Jess is she's an amazing collaborator. So in all of our discussions, I think we naturally gravitated towards that place, and it became super important. And if you do go and cross that line with anything you do in makeup, I think what you risk happening is that you take your audience out. If something doesn't ring true, authentic, honest, you run the risk that they're distracted in the film. And so that was another element of that, where you don't want to distract people. You don't want to take them out of the movie. You want them to look and, you know, and live Tammy Faye for that period of time that they're watching the film.
And Stephanie, how did you work through the evolution of Tammy Faye? Because the film covers decades. I mean, we see her as, you know, a young college student and growing into the Tammy Faye we all know and remember. So was there a particular look that was most challenging, or maybe one of your favorites?
The most, well, there was, like you said, there was lots of periods that we covered. In the beginning, you know, when she was so young and so fresh looking, and, you know, makeup and hair have to be collaborated in order to make that happen. And Linda and I did a very good job, I feel. The most challenging, actually, the look at the very end when she takes the hair piece off, and she's got like short, sparse hair underneath. That underneath wig was a bit of a challenge to make work, because it wasn't working at the beginning, and then of course we made it work, and then I had to figure out how to sew the hairband onto another wig. It's so funny, because I was one night at home and I was like, oh, why is this not coming to me? So I just took a break for 10 minutes, went back, and I was like, oh, I'll just turn it inside out, sew it on, boom, okay. But it's that kind of challenge. And the 80s look, I mean, it was my favorite. But that after Jessica showing me, and I'd seen the videos and the whole look, I was like, wow, you know, they don't make wigs like that anymore, because in those days, they were more synthetic than they were human hair. So there was a lot more in it. There was so much more to deal with. But what happened was I ended up sewing another wig to a wig to make the volume and to make it, and then I set it on perm rods to make it curly. So and the coloring, there was a lot of coloring and doing low lights and highlights. And one of the short looks, when we talked about, you know, she used, Tammy Faye used Frost and Tip. So I went to the drugstore and got Frost and Tip and actually used that actual product on the wig. Wow. And it looked great. So lots of challenges.
And Linda, for you, in terms of the aging process, we do see, you know, her makeup not just become more bold, but what is the technique that you need to use in terms of aging Jessica Chastain into someone who's older and not the same weight as she actually is?
In this case, you know, this is where prosthetics really came into the mix. So all of the aging was essentially through the prosthetics, in terms of building up a little more jowliness, you know, making the cheek areas a little bigger. So all of that, that came through pieces. The difference in terms of aging from a purely makeup standpoint was that what I noticed was there is that young, fresh-faced Tammy. Then there's the middle ground where we had her, you know, there was lots of color, but there were lots of pinks and things. She loved all that stuff. But as she got older, the wigs got deeper. Her hair got, you know, more of those deeper burgundy red tones in some cases. Her face got fuller. Her wardrobe got darker tones, deeper tones, and so did her makeup. And so she went from these lovely, bright, bold kind of colors into something that seemed deeper. And I find that when you sometimes use deeper tones, darker tones, they can be quite aging in themselves. So I think what was lovely is the hair and the color of the hair, the tones of the makeup as they got more intense and deeper. and then the prosthetics, they just all kind of came together and I think worked really well on a whole. I think if she was there in that full prosthetic makeup and that wig and she had, you know, sort of some candy colored lips or something, it just would never have quite played the same. And we also see how she got bold with lashes, and you know, she tattooed liner on. So it was a much more intense, I'll call it a harder look, you know. It made her look harder. And I think that's what contributed from my contribution to that aged makeup I would say would have been that.
And another character that drew my eye was Tammy's mother, who's fantastically played by Cherry Jones.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
one of the things that drew me to her is because I grew up in the same region as Tammy Faye Bakker, you know, the upper Midwest. And when I saw her mother, it was my grandmother's, it was my great aunt's. I mean, the hair specifically, I was just like, wow, that is spot on. What was the process like in getting Tammy Faye's mother, her look?
Well, basically I did 2 different wigs, and the younger one obviously had more hair in it, but also I colored it, and then I permed it with a perm, which then pulled the color out, which was kind of like that ashy color. And that was exactly how her mother used to wear it. And that's the color that they used to wear in those days. Yeah. So then the older look, when I saw the film, I was like, oh, didn't really read. But I took a lot of hair out of the top of the wig, but did the same coloring and did the same, you know, had the perm release the ash into the wig.
And there's, of course, so much attention that's focused on Tammy when people watch the film, but there's many other characters. Andrew Garfield plays Jim Bakker, Vincent D'Onofrio is Jerry Falwell. Could each of you, maybe starting with Linda, talk about how your team worked on those other characters we see?
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started, I was doing Jim as well. And then I had a lovely team, Ashley Chavez and Renee Goodwin in Charlotte, who basically were responsible for, you know, under my umbrella of taking care of the rest of the cast. So Vincent, Cherry, and so forth. So what I did was, you know, I had a lot of research also for them. So we had a lot of research for each of the real life characters that we're playing. You know, Vincent, of course, is Jerry Falwell. And then Pat Robertson was there. So those girls navigated those characters and I thought did a great job. And then it became apparent with Andrew. I got all of Andrew's sideburns done. But when you are laying prosthetic pieces, even in the young stage, you know, like he had his forehead was like real skin and there were some other areas. But because prosthetics has such a specific base to put on it, it's very different than anything I would use to put on the skin. It's meant for prosthetics. What we found was that it was much easier for the prosthetics guys to just do that. They're laying a base on anyways. They just laid a base on the few areas that didn't have any prosthetics. I got the sideburns. Bryson Connolly did his hair. And I oversaw things, and you know, especially in the beginning, we really wanted to work together and have Andrew as comfortable as possible. So we worked very much together. And the only other sort of thing that we made sure we did as well was that I wanted all of those TV performance sequences to have that that old school TV look where they were all wearing a little more makeup and it has slightly different tone, and that helped to lay in that period as well. So that was a thing. And so the guys and I talked about that, and then they were able to find the right color just to bump all that up. So we started off where it was, you know, more work with Andrew, and then it seemed to make more sense to kind of have the prosthetics team kind of take over some of those things. And that's where I ended up with everybody. So.
And Stephanie, how was it for you working with, a full team, and how did that all work?
I had two great ladies. They were both wonderful, and they took care of all the cast. Like Linda mentioned, we did bring in Bryce Connolly to do Andrew's wigs. There was too much. I didn't have enough hands, to create all those, plus Jessica's, plus the other characters. But Betty Lou Skinner and Heather A. Hawkins did all the rest of the cast. We just went through and, pulled the research photos. Well, Linda did a lot of the research, which was amazing. And basically, I would order the wigs, and some of the wigs I would prep, and some of them, and then they would apply them. Vincent actually wore a piece in the beginning when he was younger, which was a bit of a challenge, but I looked okay. It's hard to look at a film and not kind of look and go, oh, only if I'd done, but I think we all do that. That's just the way we are in the film industry. But yeah, everybody, I felt like everybody got taken care of, and the looks were great, even the background. I mean, we had great dailies come in, and they just rocked that look. I mean, you'd look at when they were sitting in with the telephones, and they were just like, wow, it would take you back to actually the original. Yeah. So it was wonderful.
And one of the other things I was curious about is, she goes through a lot in the film. There's a lot of trauma, and there's crying and yelling. And one of the things I think about from, a hair and makeup standpoint is when when Jessica's filming that, and then she makes a mess of herself, and then you have to do another take. What is that like for you? Is that stressful to be like, okay, we need to get her looking exactly how she looked before, so there's continuity?
I think for me, honestly, I love all that stuff. One of the joyful things about working with an actor like Jessica is that all her characters are also different. And we go from one spectrum to an end of the spectrum to another. And so I love all that. I love when it becomes, raw and maybe dirtier, and, so, and Jess is so good at that work. And I will tell you that Jessica can cry on a dime. She can drop one tear out of one eye. She can pool her eyes. So there's something very special about the fact that she's really, she's also thoughtful to how she's breaking down in the story. She gives an amazing performance, and knows that we'll just quickly tidy up. And sometimes you're not always starting at the top of the take again either, which is, then you can afford to leave some stuff in play and let it go. And even in Tammy's case, there were a couple of times eyelashes fell onto her cheek, and things got a little messy. If it worked, we left it. And so it's kind of, we love all that stuff. We like it real. And I don't think any of us are afraid of it in terms of, reestablishing, resetting, or in some cases just going, we love how that just happened. Let's leave it be for this next stuff,
Yeah, that's so true.
And Stephanie, what is it like when you wrap a project and you get to see the film for the first time? What is that like, kind of seeing your work come to screen? Is it as exciting every time?
Yes. And every time I've watched it, I just kind of go, wow. When we were actually shooting the prison scene, when she goes down and says that she wants a divorce, it's funny because this project has been ongoing. I think that was the third, right, Linda, that we finally...
I think so, yeah.
It took us a while to get to the project done, and I actually broke down. I was like, I can't believe that we actually are almost done this film. We're like we're shooting the end, and I couldn't take the emotion anymore. And it was an awesome film. It was challenging. It, you know, working with Mitchell, the costume designer as well.
He's brilliant.
It was the crew was great. It was like one of those films that you thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do something else with this group, because it was so wonderful. And of course, Jessica's always amazing. But I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that was great. And Linda and Stephanie, thanks both of you for taking the time to speak with me today. Good luck with the upcoming awards season. I'm going to encourage our viewers to head over to goldderby.com, make your awards predictions, and check out more interviews with top contenders like Linda and Stephanie. And thanks again to both of you for chatting with me about your work on The Eyes of Tammy Faye.